Hello, everyone. I'm Sandra Graham, Vice President of Division C, and I'm so pleased to be introducing this year's recipients of Division C's annual awards. To do this, I'm leaving sunny Los Angeles to travel around the country and the world, virtually, of course, to catch up with the winners. My first stop is Rochester, New York, to announce the recipient of the Sylvia Scribner Award. This award recognizes a program of work that has significantly influenced thinking and research in the field of learning and instruction. And this year's winner is Andrew Elliott, Professor of Psychology at the University of Rochester. Professor Elliott studies approach and avoidance motivation. He's probably best known to those of us in Division C for his groundbreaking research on approach and avoidance goals. We all know performance approach avoidance goals, mastery approach avoidance goals. That's Andy Elliott. So, hello, Andy. I'm here to congratulate you and to ask you a couple of questions. Okay?
Hi, Sandra. Sounds good.
Okay.
From sunny Rochester, New York.
I'm not going to rub it in. It's about 70 degrees here right now, and it's only 9:30 in the morning.
Ouch.
Okay. So, speaking of goal theory and motivation, where do you see the research going in the next decade or so? In other words, what topics do you think researchers should be studying?
Really good question. For my money in achievement goal research, I think the concept of achievement goal complexes is the way that things are going right now. It's picking up steam. In the last couple of years, there's been a number of papers that have come out about it. So this is the idea that it's not just goals per se that have important influences on psychological processes and outcomes, but the reasons behind the goals, why you are pursuing the goals in the first place. It's not just that the why creates the goal and then the goal does its own thing. It's that the why creates the goal, and jointly those two affect processes and outcomes. So for example, you can have a goal of trying to do well compared to others in order to impress your parents. That's one reason behind it. Or you can have a goal of trying to do well compared to others in order to experience the joy of success. And I think those two kinds of reasons behind the goal have very different implications for how you think and feel and behave in achievement kind of situations.
So, beyond knowing the goals themselves and their motivational significance, we now need more research on the reasons underlying the endorsement of particular goals.
Absolutely. And then this leads to really nice integration of different models. So you can think about integrating achievement goal research with self-determination theory and autonomous and controlled reasons behind the same kind of goal in achievement goal theory. So that's where most of the work has been done thus far on integrating those two models, but it applies much, much more broadly. So I think that's the wave of the future in achievement goal research.
So maybe this leads to my second question, and that's that you've accomplished so much in your career thus far. What's your next big research endeavor? Stated otherwise, let me put it another way. If time and resources were not an issue, what
Yeah.
would you most likely to be doing over the next few years?
Oh, that's a great question too. I do some work in Haiti. I work in rural Haiti. We're building some schools there and learning centers there. And I'd love to do research there. So to expand kind of the charity work we do down there, hand in hand with the local folks down there, and actually start to collect some data down there to see whether the kind of achievement goal work that I've done here and the findings that we see here in the US and Europe and what have you, whether that transfers directly down to a quite poor developing country, or whether there are differences there that could be really informative, both for that context. I care about the people that I've gotten to know there very much, and I would love to know how to apply those kind of things that we know about achievement goals to their context. But also it could inform us back here as to what we're missing and what we're oversimplifying, and we're assuming generality when it might not be there in some instances. So if time wasn't an issue, that would be what I would aim for, and I may do it even though time is an issue.
Right, that's a great topic, and that would be a wonderful collaborative effort.
Yeah.
I'd
Yeah.
love to be a part of that kind of project. So, last question. What advice do you have for graduate students and early career scholars entering the field of motivation?
Do achievement goal research. No, I'm kidding. Kind of. I think it's really important to do two things. One is to develop a program, a systematic program of research, as opposed to just kind of scattered papers here and there. And the other thing I would really encourage, which is counter cultural, if you will, is to read the old work. And what I mean by old isn't my my own work. Hopefully, I'm not that old, but read classic work by by Dewey and by James and by Murray and McClelland and Lewin and all of these folks. I just think there's so much that one can glean from the classic research. A lot of those folks were very prescient, and going back, you've got to work through some of the anachronisms of the language and what have you, but there's gems there to be mined. So I guess both systematic work, but systematic work grounded in the historical work that has come before us. It's often armchair theorizing that we could then take into the modern era and test the way we now test things more rigorously statistically.
That's great advice. Go back to the forefathers that helped really create the field of motivation. That's
and mothers.
And, yeah, thank you, and mothers. Okay, thank you, Andy, for taking a little bit of time out of your busy day in Rochester, New York. And again, congratulations on the very, very well-deserved Scribner Award.
Thank you, Sandra. It's very, very good to hear from you. And I'm honored. And just if I could say one thing, it's especially meaningful to me to share this with people like Reinhard Peckgrund and Alan Wigfield, who won this before me. They're good friends, they do great work, and to be in that kind of company is really meaningful to me.
It is, it's great. I'm sure they feel the same way. All right, thanks, be safe. See you in the virtual meeting.
Look forward to that. Take care.
All right, bye.
Bye-bye.
Now I'm heading back east on my journey from Rochester, New York to Bloomington, Indiana, and the University of Indiana, where I'm meeting up with Emily Fife, the winner of the Division C Early Career Award. Emily is an assistant professor in the Department of Psychological and Brain Sciences at IU and a PhD in 2015 from Vanderbilt. Emily is a cognitive developmental psychologist who studies how children think, learn, and solve problems in math. She has an incredible publication record for someone so early in her career. I can see how she won this award. Hi, Emily. So I can see that you're a true developmentalist. I love how you're studying math learning from early childhood to college-age students. So in a nutshell, what do you think is the most important ingredient for children in the earliest grades to help them learn to both love math and be good at it?
I think in a lot of my work, we really focus on getting students to understand both the procedures they're doing in math and the concepts that they're doing in math. That way they know what they're doing and why they're doing that, and that can give them both the motivation and the knowledge they need to keep going. So in our studies, we often measure both of those components to see how we can support children's understanding of the what to do and why to do it. And we also try to do this in a couple of different topics. So a lot of people, when they think of early math, think of counting and numbers, which is really important, that early number sense. But we also try to expand to other topics, things like early patterning skills and spatial reasoning, to sort of think about the well-rounded early math environment of these children.
So when our kids come and say, why do I have to learn my division, my multiplication tables, we'll be able to tell them why, correct? From your research. Sure. So in my world, we think about 5-year plans. So what's your next big project over the next 5 years?
So I'm really excited about this project that I've been collaborating with on here at Indiana University, a project we call Many Classes. And the idea is to sort of merge the rigorous experimental methods of my psychology background with the meaningful questions and context of education. And so we have lots of examples of people doing randomized experiments in classrooms, but they're often limited to these single classes or single topics. And what we want to know is, well, what practices work across a whole diverse array of student populations and class sizes and class topics. And so we just completed the first version of Many Classes 1, and we hope to expand the paradigm to keep going and to run these big randomized experiments at scale across a whole variety of different classes.
Oh, that's great. RCTs at scale, that's what we need. Last question. Do you have any advice for other young scholars just starting out their academic careers?
So I think the thing that has helped me most is having a really wide support network. So even starting as an undergraduate, I had a wonderful research advisor, and I also had one in graduate school and as a postdoc, and having those people above me be supportive and walking me through the steps of what it means to be in academia has been really remarkable. But also thinking not just about the network above me, but my peer network, right? And now the network that sort of I'm mentoring. So my cohort of graduate students and postdocs and undergraduate research assistants, and having that whole system working together so I can ask questions and learn from multiple perspectives has really been helpful for me.
We don't work alone. We're working with our collaborators in a network of scholars community. That's wonderful. Okay, congratulations, Emily, on this very well-deserved early career award, and hope to see you in a couple of weeks at the virtual AERA meeting. Be safe.
Thank you.
Now I'm going full circle back to Los Angeles and my home university and department. Here I'm meeting up with Jean Rue, who is the winner of the Jan Hawkins Award. This is also an early career award for contributions to humanistic research and scholarship in learning technologies. Jean got her PhD right here, right down the hall from me in our urban schooling division. And after a brief stint somewhere, she came back as a research scientist in our department in Center X. Jean studies equity in STEM and computer science education. She uses a sociocultural lens to address such critically important issues as agency and identity in STEM learning, pedagogy for groups who have historically been denied access to quality STEM and computer science education, and creating learning environments that build on students' wealth of personal knowledge and experience. So hello, Jean, and congratulations. I'm just going to ask you a couple of questions. First, we hear so much about the underrepresentation of racial ethnic minoritized students in STEM. In your view and experience, what are the barriers that so many urban high school students face when they're learning STEM and computer science?
It's a really great question. I think that if we were to look at this through the lens of computer science, we'd see that there are a lot of institutional barriers that are limiting access to courses when they are offered. And these are barriers such as the racist and sexist stereotypes that kind of influence the decisions that administrators or counselors or teachers make in regards to the students in their schools, whether administrators feel like they should even be offering computer science in their schools or at all. In the state of California, actually, only 3% of high school students receive computer science education out of a state that houses Silicon Valley, right? So it's kind of startling that the situation is so bad still, despite, President Obama put forward the Computer Science for All initiative in 2016, and it's only 4 years ago, but there've really been great movements on the rise. But there's still, again, these institutional barriers that we hit up against, as well as, I would say, the challenge of huge differences when it comes to class in terms of what students have access to outside of school. That might be the preparatory privilege that would allow them to then excel in the high school context with computing or with STEM. And then I would also like to mention the complexities of identity and how that plays into whether one feels welcome and whether one feels that if they chose to pursue a specific area of interest like computer science, if they felt like they could fit in. And some people are happy to go against the grain and not necessarily fit in and prove that they belong. And others see that and say, no, that's not for me. And And so we have a lot to do in our high school classrooms to really create this space where youth feel like this is for them and they have the right to be there.
It really isn't the motivation of students. It really is access issues that you talk about so in such a compelling way. Next question. So you've got so many funded research projects going on, and they're in. I know you're doing research in rural Mississippi, but you're with primarily African American students, and you're also doing research in our Los Angeles Unified School District and our predominantly Latinx population. How are you doing your research now with the pandemic and LAUSD schools being pretty much totally shut down?
It has been super challenging. But in some cases, I've been able to observe Zoom classrooms. And in that sense, it's not the same, of course, as being in person and being able to do sort of an ethnographic observation of a space with students and teachers. But in some few cases, I've been able to be in Zoom classrooms. And then all of our interviews have gone to Zoom as well in these online contexts where we're connecting with youth and chatting with them about their experiences and perspectives, because the larger goal of the study is really to elevate students' voices and to serve as the microphone for youth so that they can share what they're experiencing and their perspectives about what matters most for computing education, especially for youth who have been minoritized and marginalized in the field.
So the Zoom microphone, it's working. So forming partnerships with schools and school districts is not always easy. And I can see that you do this really well. So what advice would you give to other early career scholars who want to form research partnerships with schools and school districts, but may not know how to do it?
I think what's central to all of this work and what drives me to continue despite challenging moments are really the relationships. And I think paying attention, I mean, that kind of sounds, I know, like a little sappy, but paying attention to the relationships and really building a space where it's like, I want to get to know you and what you think about and what you care about, what keeps you up at night, and what are your concerns in this work. Instead of coming in and saying, I've got this research project and I think it's going to help you, because I think that so much of partnership means coming together to really define what are the challenges we're trying to address here, what are the questions we have. And sometimes, the questions I have don't always match the questions my teacher partner has, but that's actually a strength because then you can kind of puzzle those things together and see the overlaps that can result in some really important new learnings and findings, but then also the areas of difference that allow us to have multiple kind of ways into the equity work. So for sure, relationship building, also finding that one almost like champion who kind of, you have their back, they have yours, and they can connect you with the right people. And sometimes that takes a while to find your partner in that. And I think also when it comes to working with a large school district, I really try to be at the ready for anything that my district administrative partners need, because there are things that at a higher level, they say, hey, we've been wanting to do this research, or we need a researcher to be present at this event to share a specific perspective. Can you be there? It might be a whole range of things, talking to the school board about a specific issue related to computer science education. So really recognizing that it may not have anything to do in the moment with the research project and the data collection and the data analysis that are at the, the delicious stuff we get into. But
it's recognizing the reciprocal relationship that they have a lot to offer you as well as you offering them, making that really clear, mutually beneficial. Well, Jean, I can see that Jan Hawkins would have been very proud of you to know that you were the most recent recipient of the award named in her honor and her legacy. And when we're back in the fall, I'm going to come find you and we're going to go have a coffee or maybe even a glass of wine to celebrate your getting this very much deserved award. So until then, be safe, and I hope to see you virtually at the AERA meeting in a couple of weeks.
Thank you so much. Such a privilege.
Bye.
Bye.
Now I've taken a virtual red-eye from Los Angeles to Seoul, South Korea, where I'm meeting up with the winners of our award for graduate student research. I say winners, plural, because we had such a talented group of highly meritorious candidates this year. The awards committee decided to give 2 awards. And so this year's winners are Haewon Lee from Ohio State University and Hoonji Lee from Korea University. Both of these students are emerging motivation scholars. I love it. The title of Haewon's paper is Students' Classroom Experiences Matter in STEM, Joint Consideration of Expectancy Value Theory, Mindset, and Gender. The title of Hoonji's paper is Reexamining the Longitudinal Relationship Between Self-Efficacy and Interest, Differences Across Domains and Student Characteristics. So let me ask each of you, what's the single most important take-home message from your study? The single most important take-home message. Hoonji, start with you.
Yeah, the message from our work is that self-efficacy and interest has reciprocal relationship to each other for like long years, like 5 years. And well, the moderation results told us that the more stable and familiar and more developed construct influences the other. Yeah.
So basically, self-efficacy and interest, they're mutually influencing one another.
Mm-hmm.
You can't ask
So like
answer the question, which comes first.
Yeah.
Okay.
And interest was actually more influential to influence self-efficacy in more developed, in more familiar subjects like math and Korean. But in English, many Korean students are less familiar with English than math and Korean. And in that subject, self-efficacy is more important role to influence interest. And that was an interesting finding.
So it depends on the domain. Okay,
yes, right.
I want to ask you the same question. What's the most important take-home message from your study?
Yeah, thank you for asking. So in my study, I looked at the relations between mindset and expectancy value components and the mediating role of students' psychological experiences in classroom. And one take-home message would be students' mindset would play a role in interpreting their experiences in classroom, and it'll in turn influence students' motivational beliefs like self-efficacy and values and costs and achievement. And specifically, I looked at how these processes will differ between genders. And for women with fixed mindset, may perceive like may more concerned about their underperformance than others, then this experience will lead to more less optimal motivational experiences. So that'll be my take-home message.
Sounds like mindsets do influence expectations, and maybe more so for women than men in your study.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's like a really important finding. So both of you, when I looked at your papers, both of you had pretty complex multivariate analyses and longitudinal data. You're both first authors on your paper. That's what qualified you for this award. So Haewon, I'm going to start with you. What's the most challenging thing about writing an empirical paper?
Wow. Okay. So every single process is definitely challenging, but the most challenging part is like developing my idea based on theories. So that's the most challenging because there are so many like factors, and specifically in our studies, there are so many factors were considered. So it was really hard to explain how they would interplay with one another based on theoretical perspectives and prior evidence. So justify my findings based on theories definitely will be the most challenging part.
So
Yeah.
justify your findings and how they fit or don't fit with the theory.
Yeah.
That's a challenge we all continue to face. So Wenji, what's the most fun part of being the first author on an empirical paper?
Well, the most fun part was coming up with interpreting the diverse results at the same time. So I wanted to explain the diverse results from various analyses with the same coherent arguments. And that was really challenging, but it was also exciting and fun. Yeah.
To explain all the findings. So it's
Right.
It's the playing with ideas part of what we do.
Right.
Okay, so now you're both graduate students. Maybe you have another year or two in graduate school before you get your PhDs. So what's your long-term goal after you get your PhD? So Hanji, I'll start with you, your long-term goal.
Well, I want to be a professor, and I'm actually preparing for my doctoral dissertation. And after the graduation, I want to build and broaden my experience in motivational and developmental research, working as a postdoc in the US. And then I just want to study more about that because it is fun and fascinating field. So, yeah.
So you'd like to eventually be an academic and start with a postdoc.
Right.
Yes. What about you? What's your long-term goal?
So my research most of my research is grounded on my experience as an elementary school teacher. So I'm highly interested in contributing to instructional design that supports students in classroom settings. Specifically, I'm examining this motivation process in STEM fields throughout my PhD career. So this experience naturally led me to think about how we can specifically support underrepresented students. So like women and racial and ethnic minority students. So my ultimate goal is to provide insight into the instructional design or interventions that support underrepresented students in classrooms.
Wonderful. So you'd like to be working in a more applied field of instructional design, perhaps that would be a PhD. So those are wonderful goals for both of you, and congratulations, and we wish you the best in all your
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I finished my journey. I'm heading back to Los Angeles after traveling halfway around the world to catch up with our illustrious award winners across the academic pipeline. From those who are just starting their careers, like Han-Ji and Haiwan, to those who have achieved early career success, like Emily Fife and Jean Rue, and finally, to those who are clearly at the top of their game, like Andy Elliott. Division C is in very good hands. Be safe, everyone, and see you virtually at the business meeting.